Arigakusei. Thank you for tuning in to Mizuchi Dojo Radio, a weekly podcast featuring discussions between the best martial arts in Western New York on a variety of martial arts concepts. I'm your host, Bill Reynolds, and joining me today are these panelists. We have Chris Poet, trained since 1990, 6th degree black belt in Bushido Kai, and Dillon Pinkham, trained since 15 years old, 5th degree black belt in Karate, and Rob Guida, trained since 2010, a 2nd degree black belt in Kenpo Karate. Thank you, gentlemen. If you want to find out more about these guys, you can find that information in our show notes. So this episode, we're going to talk about playing in a sport versus training in a martial arts. How is it the same? How is it different? Possibly more importantly, how is it different? Rob, how would you start us off? Hajime.
Sure. So this kind of stems from a conversation I had with a football coach the other day. We were talking about the differences in the sports, and the thought that average person, average student, average kid, average whoever, they go and they pick up soccer, they pick up baseball, they pick up hockey, they pick whatever they pick up, and they fool around with it for a little while. Um, it's got a different feel to it than the martial arts. You sit there and you practice this thing and you do it and you get some skills or whatever, that's fine. But when you start learning martial arts, it's more about, to me anyway, as long as you're in a good school, it's more about the whole person. It's more about the developing the character of a person. It's more about challenging individuals and making them better. And the secondary portion is almost like, well, can you do the heel palm strike right? Like, okay, whatever. Um, Eventually you will, but it's more about, did you challenge yourself and get better at it? And I think it's uniquely a martial arts thing. Um, where you think about it, like you sit there and you learn a form, right? And then all of a sudden you're put there in a tournament and you have to perform that form, and you feel like 1,000 people are watching you, and nobody's watching you except for your parents and three judges. But you feel like 1,000 people are watching you, and it builds character, and it builds resiliency, and it builds toughness, and it builds all these things um, that I don't think every sport does. And I think it's different. You go out there and you play soccer and you're part of a team. Okay, great. Um, you don't get the same type of, you know, emotional, physical, and mental challenge that I think you do when you do martial arts. I have no concrete evidence. It just feels different to me. The only concrete evidence I do have is, when you do martial arts, it's a never-ending journey, right? It's like, so think about it. There's no season, there's no off period, there's no time where you're like, hey, I'm not doing baseball anymore. I'm doing something else. It's a continuous thing that could last 40, 50, 60 years, every week, every day. So in that way, it is kind of concretely different. But yeah, it's just a kind of a feeling that I have that's unique, how we challenge students and build character and build people up in the martial arts that kids and adults don't get that in other sports.
Okay, Dillon.
Yeah, I agree with Rob. I think that the martial arts is unique. Of course, I'll admit it, I'm biased. I think that the martial arts are the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I would always, if it was one or the other, I would always encourage martial arts. I think that it has, like Rob said, tremendous benefits, and it's just not a marketing scheme talking. I've seen it. All of us as instructors has seen it firsthand. Could tell stories upon stories upon stories about how we've watched kids grow, we've watched adults grow. And well, I know that there are those stories. I know that um, sports and team sports help with that, and everybody has their story, and I know that any and every coach could have their story. um Martial arts grows with you. It evolves with you, like we had mentioned about age. What you could do when you were a teenager, you might not be able to do when you turn 30, but you change, your mindset changes. um and Yeah, and I guess too, that goes back to what we talked about the previous one where we talked about the skills ever expire. You know, certainly your skills in skating on ice playing hockey, those could expire because your knees and your ankles aren't going to be the same. It's kind of hard to adapt to that, but as you age, as you go through life, you can adapt your martial arts. Like I said, it grows with you. So in that, I think that that's unique, and I like that in the martial arts, families can do it together. You know, you could have your youngest that's however young you teach. You know, I start at 3. You could have a 3-year-old, you can have a 13-year-old, you can have a mom, you can have a dad, and the family can do it together. That's my story. That's how I was brought up in the martial arts. There were 8 of us in a house, and we all did it at one point. Um, the whole family can't play pee-wee soccer. You know, I mean, sure, yeah, you could go out and kick the ball around in the backyard, but can you spar? Can you know, you can't spar with each other. You can't practice form and technique with each other. It's just not the same. So that's my rant.
Okay. Chris, opening thoughts.
Opening thoughts. Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarity between like the martial arts and sports, like such as football. But I see mostly like sports like that, football, basketball, baseball, more as team oriented. Where I think martial arts is more of personal growth. Um, where you know and I think that's how we uh, rank our students going from one belt to another, right? Their personal growth, how they were here at maybe yellow belt, now they're going to green belt. You know, it's more of a you know uh, of their achievement per se. But yeah, I think you know, but I think they're also very similar too. I mean, whatever you put into your sports, it you'll get more into it. Just like in martial arts, if you put more into it, I think you'll become a better martial artist.
Okay. All right. For myself, um, I think the thing I like the most of the things I've heard said already, and is that I think there is a difference in training in martial arts than there is in playing sports. And many of them, of course, I'm biased, I think are good, and not many bad. Um, I will say that, depending upon the coach in a sport, this can certainly vary, but I think that there is, in sports, other sports, I think there is a greater opportunity to get sort of public recognition for what you do. And you go to competitions, matches, games, and to an audience of some sort. And the only way you're going to get that through martial arts is if you go to tournaments. And not all martial arts training is going to be including of tournaments, as much as any of us here could argue that it should. Um, so I can't, since it's not though mandatory or routine or a regular piece of martial arts training, I can't fully say that's a necessary difference. Also, I think the other thing that when I think about, playing sports versus training in karate, I would say the other possible deficit to or martial arts, not just karate, is that that it is, I think, harder to introduce the idea of playing in martial arts just because psychologically you come in saying, we train here, we don't play karate, we don't play taekwondo, we train in it, and so it's a much more serious concept. And I think keeping the fun in there and not letting people get too serious is a challenge for martial arts. And I think that's one way that those two that martial arts differs from other potential sports in that way. And finally, I guess last. I don't know if this is a deficit, but I certainly, in my own mind, when I think about martial arts and where they are sort of from a cohort perspective, I think you guys have heard me before say that I see the 3 cohorts of um, classical martial arts, traditional martial arts, and contemporary martial arts. And contemporary martial arts is more sport like. Definitely has that competition element into it. The tournaments versus traditional or classical. And so not all martial arts have that. And I think, and I don't know depending on what you want out of your martial arts, you're not necessarily going to have that at all. What's good, I love the idea of it's martial arts, as far as I can tell. That would be one of the very few sport-like activities that the whole family could do at the same time. Um, just any other sport, in theory, they'd be put into different divisions, different brackets, just based on gender and or age. And certainly, what there would be divisions as to belt level. There could be very much, husband and wife training in the same class, two siblings in the same class. Very possible, and where I don't see that as necessarily happening, but obviously we know there's examples in sports where, like, the Williams sisters, they like trained together in tennis, so it was sort of a family thing, but maybe not the same. So I think that's, at least initially, that's my thought. The only other thing I would say that I see, how I see martial arts is different and possibly better. I don't necessarily go with the idea entirely that it's about individual improvement, although that's generally how it's conceptualized. But I do think that it is about, it is much more focused on the development of the person, which also includes their social skills. Because I feel like, if, to my perspective, if you are teaching people martial arts correctly, you are teaching them that what they do in the defense of themselves has an impact on other people, whether it's their training partner or an attacker. And so getting them into this idea of the interrelationness of themselves is something that I don't think any other sport really applies to. In most sports, if you have a competitor, they are a competitor, not a colleague. Those are my opening thoughts. Let's open it up to broader discussion. So I guess I wanted to get back to this idea of family and how that distinguishes martial arts training from others. How many people here have families training in their school?
I have had. I don't have any right now.
I do.
It doesn't need to be right now. It could have been at any time.
I have had. Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
mean, I
mean, it's
did.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's. Yeah, Bill, you're like, continue to talk. Well, I mean, it's great. I mean, because, like, I'm thinking of, I mean, even back, Chris. I mean, you remember, oh my God, what's his name? The big guy, the green belt who left. His daughter was here. Oh
Oh,
man,
yeah. Yeah, I know you're talking about
um,
Sean. No, no,
Sean.
yeah.
Oh, okay, Sean. Another good example. Sean was a fantastic adult student, and he came and he helped with the kids class. His kid was in the class. They were able to take the class, essentially the kids class together. He did his separate training in the adult class. They were able to practice at home together. They were able to do it together, and it brought them great joy. I think Dylan's right in that sense. I mean, that is unique. I mean, like, you can't really do that in any of as far as I know, anywhere else. I mean, you're not going to the football field together with your
Right.
mom or dad. You're not going there in the soccer field. So
Or if you
yeah,
are,
that is kind
they're
of unique.
standing on the side.
Right. They're not at the same time anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I think that's a wonderful part of it, in a sense. I encourage the parents to take adult class and come and help with the kids class, to be with their families. I don't have any right now doing it. Shout out to parents, you should, um, um, but it is great.
That's how, to be honest, that's how I get most of my adult students. Um, because I open their I guess their minds to that concept that, hey, this is a bonding experience, that a unique bonding experience that you have. And yeah. Um they help each other out. I mean, it's great too, because I've had so many stories where they'll come in and they'll be like, the kids will be like, yeah, I showed mom or dad this and I was teaching them. It's that leadership, right? That modeling behavior, positive modeling behaviors that we're hoping to instill in our younger groups. So, um, such an empowering thing for younglings to be able to teach the Jedi Masters, right? To
I
say,
was gonna
hey,
say, Obi-Wan.
I knew you'd appreciate that. But yeah, so
Um, yeah, and I think the other, getting back to like the idea of, how much of this is about, well, what we're doing for a person and their growth. Like I think I don't know if it was Rob or somebody, Chris, saying about growing with you, you grow with it, whatever. Which I agree. There's the impact. When you consider that you want people to personalize your system to them, their body, but also their philosophy and their mind. It should in theory grow as they grow and change. But one of the things I think about, I don't know how many of you guys have this with your kids' classes, but I think some parents bring their children to a martial arts school because they worry about their child getting into fights or being picked on. But sometimes they bring them because they say, my kid needs better self-control, more discipline. I want them to actually learn to how not to accidentally hurt people and to like get their whole self in control. And so
Yeah.
I don't know many sports that sort of like have that as a possible benefit like martial arts does.
Right.
I think it depends on the school a little bit, obviously. I mean, every school is a little bit different. Um, what I try to tell the parents for the youngest kids, even, the 3 to 5 year olds that I teach, like it's not about karate. They're not learning karate. Like they're 5 years old. I mean, they're mimicking some move and that's it. It's more important to me that they hit the bag when I say hit the bag and they don't hit the bag when I say don't hit the bag. It's more important that they line up when they're supposed to line up and they don't run around. Like I don't. If your school is, and I'm not saying I gotta be careful what I say here. I'm not saying all schools have to run that way. I mean, there's different ways of running your schools, and that's fine. Um, but when in my school anyway, when someone doesn't listen, I make them do bear crawls, or I make them run, or they make them wall sit, or um, you know, whatever the case is, and it's kind of like, can I get water? No, you can't get water. It's a 40-minute class. Can I go to the bathroom? No, you can't go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom before class. Um, and it's not because you want to be mean to them, but you want to instill a little bit of discipline in them that even at that young age that they have to take a little bit of responsibility. For example, go to the bathroom before class, make sure your uniform's on, make sure your stuff's right. Make sure you're hydrated. I talk to them about what I call the four pillars. Like you have to eat right, you have to sleep, you have to drink water, right? You have to be outside, like those things to make yourself healthy. I don't know sports that do that, that really instill in that kind of like what I do, and I think my friends do, and what good martial arts schools do. Um, I just don't know any sports or other sports that kind of do that. And football is the one that comes to mind. Yeah, I've done that, and my son's done that. It's very similar in that respect. But I don't know any other sports that kind of does. Maybe hockey. I don't know. I don't have experience with hockey though.
How about you guys? Are you aware of like any other sport that you've ever had contact with or engaged in where there was the same sort of emphasis on a holistic view on your training, your health?
No, no.
Yeah.
no. um, no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
just don't think they. I don't think they touch on it. They teach them how to play whatever thing they're doing, and they go on with their day.
yeah, but I don't think it is limited to children. Like I have a
No,
student right now who's
yeah,
they're into bodybuilding. I have another one who is into powerlifting, and uh, and one of the things we talk about is balancing out their training. Making sure that like for one of them, I said I need you to start where you can using YouTube for free, training in yoga. I think you really need the sort of or Tai Chi. I just need
yeah,
them to like get a greater sense of flow and calm and to balance out their otherwise they're very aggressive, uh, as we'd say in my world, yang driven. mentality, too much energy, too much maleness, and I don't think any other sport would ever criticize that way. They said, go ahead, destroy yourself. Work yourself as hard as you want, even if it means injury. You'll work through the injury and you'll be stronger for it. And that's not necessarily the case. You can break yourself. And I've seen people do that.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is different, um, martial arts is a way of humbling you. Like just when you think you're good, something humbles you. Your teacher teaches you a new form, and you're like, this thing is kicking my butt today. Or you go up against somebody in sparring, and you realize you're not as good as you thought you were, or whatever the case is. It has a way of just kind of like, what's what I'm looking for? Pulling that out of you, to make you more humble. Because man, you can't, I don't know anybody that's undefeated. You know, everyone gets beat. So I think that's uniquely martial arts kind of too, in a way.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think there is wins and losses in sports. Many of them aren't personal. It's your team, but there are, like again, going back to tennis, that's just you, and you're going to get ranked nationally or
Sure.
internationally. And that I'm sure that's a humbling experience. Or golf,
And
but
good examples. Yeah.
yeah, but
Wrestling.
with either of those, I feel like, like how's it? I was just recently doing a review. I think we have like 27 hand tools and about 27 lower body tools. All sorts and that's just like striking skills. Not even talking about grappling or strangulation or anything like that. And you consider any other sport, how many skills does a person have to perfect? Even in like
Yeah.
football, I become a great tackler, I become a great receiver, a great defensive guy. But they're not usually going to be like the quarterback for the Bills, where they can throw it and they can also run it in. That's and they have, more than one skill set that's actually at a decent or really good level. That's just uncommon. Um, and I don't know how many different I don't play tennis, but it looks like there's either a forehand and a backhand, and that's pretty much it. And then just sometimes running as hard as you can from one side of the court to the other. Certainly, anybody who plays tennis a lot, you're welcome to express your comments.
Well, it's
There's
nuanced, right? But it's still a forehand or a backhand.
yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think martial arts has that over any other sport by miles. It asks you to learn so much.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the character development's the biggest thing, honestly. Like the character development is just, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've had what, I've been teaching what, 15 years now or something like that. 1,000 students or more go through the school. There might be, I don't know, Chris, what do you think? Maybe 5, 10 really good martial artists that have come through of all those students. The rest of them have been, character development, make them better people, make them stronger, make them physically fit, make them more confident. They're not martial artists. I mean, they're not, that was never their goal. Um, the goal is to be a better person.
Especially like like if it's a young child, I guess it really depends on why mom or dad is bringing them to the school, And one thing you haven't brought up is like motor skills, I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen like a lot of students, you know, start martial arts because they don't have very good motor skills, and I think that's one of the things that I mean, martial arts definitely helps in definitely.
Yeah, and I think Bill's right too. It's kind of limited when you play sports a little bit because you're doing the same type of thing
Mhm.
over and over again. And if a good martial arts school, you should be training your whole body really, and it's a little bit different. Feels different to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, even just if you think about the mindset that in a martial arts school, your instructor or assistant instructor will note some deficit in the student, and they can then say, let's focus on that. Let's focus on improving that. Um, If you're doing that in a team sport or an individual sport, that means either you're on the bench or or you're not even making it through the preliminary rounds to even play because you are lacking skills. And it's just expected that you will gain those skills on your own somehow. Maybe you'll like ask the offensive coach or the defense coach or the head coach, could you like tell me exercises I could do? And but generally they're like, no, just keep coming to training, keep coming to practice. You'll get it. And knowing in their head, well, either the kid's going to get it or they're not going to get it, and then they're either going to stay on the team or they're going to be dropped or they're going to be put onto reserves or who knows what. Where I think in martial arts instructions, the instructors are really thinking, we gotta help this kid with their self-control, or we gotta help this kid with their flexibility, or who knows what. Um,
Yeah.
Very different. Uh, all right. I don't want to pump this longer. You guys feel like you've said your piece. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, just one more thought, and Datu Hartman kind of talked about this once to me, and it really hit me kind of hard. He's like, this is why like we should not be competing against each other as martial arts schools. Like we should all be working together. What we're competing against is football and baseball and soccer and volleyball and all these other activities that don't offer what we all offer in our own unique way, right? So your school is different than my school, different than Dylan's school, different than Todd's school. They're all different. But what we're really competing against is those other activities that kids are doing. We're not competing against each other. And I think that's something I've been thinking about for years now, and it's kind of driven me to try to be friends with everybody so much because I think he's right. I think that at the end of the day, if I had to choose between two things for my kids, I would have picked sending them to Bushido Kai versus any volleyball or soccer or whatever it is. You know, looking back at it, I mean that would have been the better choice.
Yeah, well, I think that's I'm a little bit beyond the scope of this episode, but I do agree with you that there are social pressures that lead people to choose training in a martial art versus picking up a sport. Like,
Sure.
I just had an adult who like said their choice they had in their mind was either they could train in a martial art or they could pick up some sport. I forget which one they said. I'm just say they were gonna do dancing, but either way,
Back row tap.
but there's yeah, but some people they're going to value more, let's say ballroom dancing skills as an adult than they are martial arts for whatever reason. I'm not seeing what we're talking about in here, which is that martial arts, unlike any other way they could train, any other activity they could get involved in, they can get ultimately a very personalized training experience where,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and getting the message out is important. So
True, and I don't know. I agree with you. I guess I don't. Do schools actually compete against each other? Or are they hostile in
I
some way? Oh, okay.
I have heard stories.
Huh.
Um, I don't see it anymore. I mean, I don't compete against any. I consider all these schools around me friends. I mean, I don't consider them competition, but I have certainly heard stories back in the day in other schools that aren't, I do know schools that aren't, for example, open to going to tournaments, aren't open to joining our league, aren't open to exposing their students to us because they're scared we're going to steal students.
Huh.
Like that type of thing does happen. I mean, I do
I
hear
don't
that
doubt
still.
it. I don't doubt it. Yeah. Um,
I think it's crazy, but you know,
I think it also could possibly involve a lot of hubris or maybe a lot of confidence in what we were saying right now. That maybe whomever this person might be, who is afraid of losing their students, also feels like what they have to offer is unique and valuable. And so they're
I
going
think
to
it's your first
safeguard it.
answer. Sure.
Okay, any closing thoughts, Chris?
No, I think we're all on the same side. Everybody on the panel here kind of leans towards martial arts versus sports. And I I kind of side with that thought as well.
Hmm.
It's hard to
Okay.
get a dissenting view when we're all martial artists.
Yeah,
True,
I would
true.
say that, like, I heard people say this before. Like, certainly, I don't expect us to come out of this necessarily against each other, or with any really strong disagreements. I think different points of view,
True.
perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I expect we'll usually all fall on the same page, especially on a topic like this. Um, Yeah, more so just like, any other unique pieces you wanted to make sure, like, I think Rob was taking this moment to like just say, hey, martial arts training places, we all have something great to offer and there's plenty to go around, and or, so let's work together towards making a better community than I guess undermining each other, or stealing from each other, or fearing being stolen from. Um, uh, Dylan, how about you? Any final thoughts?
I guess I've having two daughters of my own. I look at martial arts training as a necessity, just like most parents look at learning how to swim as a necessity, as a basic life skill, right? I've never met a parent that said, "No, I don't think my child needs to learn how to swim." I look at martial arts being the same way, that I think that every child, and we're all instructors, so I'm sure that we all think the same thing, but I think that at least getting children to the point of um, at least early teens, get them some type of exposure to martial arts. And this day and age, man, the world's brutal, and building, to me, the resiliency that martial arts can, and the self-confidence and the empowerment that martial arts can give, regardless of the system, regardless of the style, is so important. Just like, to me, knowing how to swim, knowing how to float is so darn important. So yeah, my aim is, man, just let me work with your kid until they get in, till they're in sixth grade. Give me till fifth or sixth. Let me get those basic skills for them. And um, that's one of my goals as an instructor. That's my target age, I guess you would say.
Mm. Yeah, I would add, because that's not my target age. As much as I oddly enjoy teaching kids, which is very interesting for me to say, because in my original clinical training, I was going to be a child and adolescent specialist, not an adult therapist. But yeah, life takes you where it takes you. Uh, my feeling though is it's also important to get the word out to other adults. I think that, just like you said, swimming is an important skill. I am always taken aback when I meet an adult and they tell me, I don't know how to swim. I grew up in Arizona, I don't know. And they just say, so I didn't need to know how to swim. I'm like, we should know how to swim. Like, right now we're talking about it because we're going out on a boat and you're telling me that you're terrified. Uh, I think that, in this day and age, also, I think all adults should have a sense of how to take care of themselves and the people they care about, if need be, with their bare hands and feet and forehead, whatever. And in case they're not into weapons use.
Right.
But I think it's just as valuable, and also the confidence it will instill in them, and also a greater sense of how to negotiate conflict, not necessarily ending up in fights. Because I don't know about you guys, but that's like discussed a lot in my training as well. And with that, I'll say yame. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, listeners, for your attention. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, and you can share them to our threads, Mizuchi_dojo. Or you can email us at mizuchi.dojo.hanbu@gmail.com. Also, please consider supporting this podcast by subscribing via our Patreon. For $1 a month, you'll not only help keep this podcast in the air, but our dollar subscribers can vote on what topic they want the panel to discuss in the next recording session. Higher contributors can have their feedback read on air, and even higher contributors can get a regular shout out for the martial arts school of their choice. You can find more information in our show notes, as well as our Patreon page. Matiasai.